Good evening. Thank you all for coming. This is the annual meeting for the Northampton Community Television Board, and we also have members here from the advisory board serving, and then of course members of the membership. We have quorum, and this is the meeting by which we represent as we're required to by charter, and it's also as we're required to because we feel it's since we're a community asset that we are beholden to report to the community. That's what the purpose of this meeting is. We have an agenda to follow. So the first thing is I just did the call to order. How was that? Everyone have a good time? Okay. And I'm going to throw it over to Al Williams, who's going to give us a distilled version of the annual report, and then we'll proceed from there.
What you have in front of you, if there are audience members who want hard copies of this report, there are some copies over on the desk over here. The annual report is about 67 pages long. After tonight, we'll have it posted on our website as a PDF. We printed out a limited number of very long hard copies, but a lot of this material is either numbers, detailed, meeting minutes, things of that nature. So what we'll go through today mostly is just about 19 pages of documents that summarizes our report and our plan for the next year. There are a few key points to start the annual report section that occurred over the past year. We summarize this on one of our early pages. For instance, we held our first annual meeting, which was back in January, meaning that our first annual meeting was actually 10 months ago, and we're about a year open to the public as of right now, roughly, about a month shy of that. We've employed our first intern from the Northampton school system. Our website went live this year with an available program guide online. We've uploaded our first YouTube video. We attended an International Alliance for Community Media conference. We have volunteered to be a beta test site for the Massachusetts Access statewide server project, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We've hired a third staff person, Emily Goodwin, who is not here tonight because she's helping shoot the Booster Club Parade.
Which will be going on outside in a moment.
We've attended and arranged bi-monthly Western Massachusetts Executive Directors meetings for community media centers across the valley, up and down the valley. The first area we report on is programming and membership. Over the last year, we had approximately 81 total new members. Okay, now that's broken out into two different categories. Some of those we call pending members, and some of them are full members. By pending members, what we refer to is that they may not have paid their fee for the year or arranged for volunteer time in lieu of the fee or asked for a waiver of a fee. A lot of times what happens is that people may sign up to be a member of NCTV, but they'll wait until they actually take their production class to follow through with that arrangement. So we break it out that way because we do lose some of those people. Last year we had about 17 of those people, and 9 of those remain. So about half of those people stay with NCTV, and half of them just sign up and say, I want to be a member, but then sort of never follow through after that point. That brings us to a total of 143 members if you include those groups. And that includes our first 3 organizational memberships. Okay. We have 32 new certifications, people who've gone through certification programs. That means they finished and tested out of that. Some people have dropped out of the class after taking it. Some people have not finished their testing. Some people have done things like that. We've had approximately 4 workshop sessions since January. Those run about 7 weeks, plus an editing session, which occurs after that. Just to give you an idea of what our typical certification is presently for our production workshop, we teach studio camera use, EFP or field camera, field production, basic audio, basic 3-point lighting, and after that, students enroll in a nonlinear editing course, which was iMovie when we began this year, and which is now Final Cut Pro. We've generally eliminated iMovie from our curriculum unless it's requested by users. And we're starting training on Final Cut from scratch. In addition, we had 5 days of workshop sessions with approximately 100 students in the Northampton High School video program. And after those training sessions, approximately 6 of those groups took advantage of roughly 11 sessions. This brings us to a total days of use, producer equipment use, and we had 155 days of equipment use this year, okay, since January. That means days where equipment was checked out by somebody who was a member of NCTV. As of the last annual report, that figure was 27 days. Okay, so then what follows is a long list of programming, and I'm not going to get too involved in this. It is available for people who want to see it. I break it into a couple of categories. One of those categories is programming produced by NCTV, which was 42 programs. That means produced by NCTV staff, perhaps also with the help of volunteers. That approximates roughly one production a week by NCTV staff. Programming produced by NCTV producers. These are people who are members of NCTV who produce programming for air on NCTV. We had approximately 64 of those programs. And if you scroll further down to page 6 of our document, we have other programming. Now, other programming can be a variety of things. It can mean that people have produced a show at another access center. People have brought in programming that they have permission to air. People who are not members of NCTV produce something for their own edification and bring it in, and they want us to show it on NCTV. Also shows produced by the federal government, state government, etc. There were approximately 324 of those since January. That approximates to total programming hours of about 150 hours a week. I don't have the math down here, but that means we're showing very little community calendar. There are roughly 168 hours in the week. Okay, we're programming most of that. Most of the time you turn on NCTV, you should see something that is not bulletin board. It's not alphanumeric programming, it's programming of some sort. Of those 150 hours, there are approximately 31 hours a week that are unique. So the rest of those are repeats of those programs. That's what that figure is going to represent. Per week, our per week average for unique programming hours, for local unique programming hours, meaning things that were produced by NCTV and NCTV members, is 7.1 hours per week. I should mention if there are any questions from the board at any point. Feel free to.
And actually, given the size, it's certainly amenable to the membership as well. If anyone has any questions, if you do have a question, raise your hand to be recognized and speak into the microphone at the podium. Great, that way.
We have a financial report that is part of the long document that's attached here that shows our balance sheet and our profit and loss versus our budget for this financial year. As of right now, we have over $200,000 in our bank account. So we're in pretty solid financial terms. We're in the black, about double what we expected to be, meaning as of right now, we figured we'd be up about $11,000 in the black this year, and we're approximately at $26,000. Okay. That's an updated figure, so you may have a slightly different one built with the first file. I updated those figures this morning. There's also a list of all the equipment we've purchased. Now, we don't include equipment such as every cable or every adapter we purchased. We can produce that if anyone ever really wants that. We do record that information, but we don't include it as the kind of equipment we show. What we show is trackable inventory. That includes anything that's a capital purchase, and also anything that's might not even be a capital purchase, but it's something that maybe a $60 or $70 item that we want to track because it has a shelf life. For fundraising, NCTV raised $2,105 in membership fees this year. Since January 1, and $457 in duplication services. We also received a $500 donation for the installation of a robotic camera system in the City Council chambers, and raised $522 through coverage of the Northampton High School graduation. We anticipate that graduation figure will be a lot more next year because we didn't have an opportunity to market it this year. The decision to cover it was made roughly a week to the same week that graduation exercises happened. We also donated a third of that money to the incoming junior class, so not the graduates, but the next class, the incoming senior class. We give We received about $1,000 approximately in barter goods from an artist for the NCTV facility. We had a local artist donate a series of 6 paintings to us. And we are nearing the end of talks with Al Jazeera Television, Al Jazeera International, who has agreed at this point to donate approximately $5,500 to NCTV to install a satellite dish on top of the high school. In addition to that, part of that figure could go, should we accept this donation, towards installation of other satellite dishes, because they'd be paying all the upfront costs for that kind of installation. There are some hiccups we're still ironing out with Al Jazeera concerning, specifically, and I haven't addressed the board about this, but Comcast contacted us and expressed some concern in that they believe Al Jazeera because Al Jazeera is a commercial network, will be a nonprofit airing the product of a commercial network. Now, there are no, let me back up. Al Jazeera, I contacted Al Jazeera and wanted an explanation of exactly what kind of commercial content was on their feed. They show spots on the hour, which we can program around, which means the content we'd be showing would be non-commercial in nature. Comcast isn't sure whether they agree with that or not. There are some other nonprofits across the United States that are showing Al Jazeera that are nonprofit organizations, and that's what they do, is they program around those hours. Link Television is one. Okay, and there's also Burlington, Vermont, and the Buckeye Network in Ohio. That's the third one.
Are they subcontractors? They do subcontracting in nonprofits, and then.
The interesting
Well, what I'm confused is,
yes.
Do they represent the nonprofit face of Al Jazeera, which may be construed as commercial programming, but they only carry the programming that's not commercial, that doesn't have spots associated with it?
All of the programming only has spots on the hours. Link TV is a television network carried on satellite. So they are syndicating or simulcasting one program from Al Jazeera is what they do. In Burlington, Vermont, their access center shows Al Jazeera.
So there is a precedent of an access center show, and do they have any?
They-
I have a point of order.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
this,
This is not actually technically part of the report. We could have this
I
discussion
mean, I
afterwards.
think we all want to have this
Yeah.
discussion, but it might be better to finish this and so that we get through,
Yeah.
whatever you need to officially get through is all I'm thinking, because I think, I'm sure we've got lots of good questions, but.
I guess the point is there are some hiccups. So when I say we've reached the end of that $5,500 agreement, we're pending some issues before we move forward with it, okay? We've also begun a joint discussion with a group called the Regional Technology Council. Okay, they are a subgroup within the Western Mass Economic Development Agency. What they do is they're a statewide group, they're a governmental group that is attempting to encourage technological and economic development throughout Massachusetts, specifically in Western Mass, this group. So what we're doing is exploring a coalition between a number of community television stations in the Valley in order to carry some of their programs, some of their content. At first, just as an experiment to see what kind of feedback and exposure we get regarding it, and then possibly as to create some sort of symbiotic funding mechanism where we can draw some revenue from this. They're also, one of the members is STCC. They have a technology center they built at STCC, which is sort of spearheading the technology arm of this program. So we've had 2 meetings with them at this point to talk about that possibility. As far as an audit, once again, our accountant has recommended that we not undergo an audit this year because our books are very straightforward. We have pretty low numbers and pretty straightforward books. So per last year, it would cost us, it would be prohibitive to undergo that audit at this point. Recommends we don't. Okay. That also attaches a copy of our newest rules and regulations. Not much changed since last year. The biggest change being that we introduced an organizational membership structure and also a household structure. We've received quite a bit of feedback over the past year, and I break out some of it here for you, and try to summarize the kinds of things that we've heard. One is the quality of both signal and production values on NCTV continues to steadily improve. A number of citizens have commented directly on the quality of improvement of programs on NCTV, especially in terms of government coverage. That's a highly visible product for the community. And we received a lot of positive quality comments regarding NHS graduation as well. There were some times when viewers experienced signal problems. These were mostly due to occasions when NCTV modulators broke down. This is an ongoing issue for NCTV as it experiences the aging of still working equipment it inherited from Comcast. NCTV replaced 2 modulators this year and is currently deliberating on the repair or replacement of a 3rd unit. So these are units that we use to broadcast to the public. 2 of them melted down. One of them practically literally melted down this year. And we repaired 2 of them. We have a 3rd unit that we use that is a backup unit. We don't currently need it, but it's been recommended that we replace and not repair it because it's so old. So this is just things I think we can expect moving forward with some of the equipment that we didn't buy new as NCTV in the changeover, that we're going to have some repairs like this along the way. We had a number of residents express a desire to receive Al Jazeera programming on NCTV. Well, we spoke earlier about a shift in tone in comments regarding our government coverage. For some time towards the beginning of the year, by the beginning of the year I mean in January, we received sort of regular comments that NCTV was somehow in league or conspiring with the Northampton government. This would occur especially on occasions when things happen such as our modulators broke. So we had meetings where we were covering, for instance, a city council meeting. We had an incident, and our modulator fried itself, and so people thought we were blacking out that particular portion of that city council meeting purposefully. We did record the rest of the meeting, have it available at Forbes Library, as we do with all the government meetings we covered. So we didn't lose that. We just simply lost that initial live broadcast. I think it was 45 minutes of broadcast for that thing. So I think as a fledgling organization, a lot of people were sort of, we would get that comment from time to time from people. But as we move forward, that tone has changed quite a bit. And for instance, we've recently covered a number of landfill forums, and people on, if you call it both sides of the forum, a number of different groups have collaborated in putting on those forums, and we generally get thank yous from everybody regarding that. Okay, so I think improving our quality is helping us improve our that perception about us. Okay. Also, the fact that we do things like archive those meetings is quite helpful. Now, we have received some negative comments regarding NCTV, but very few. We received 2 complaints related to the concept of charging an annual fee, which I just note here is scalable, waivable, and exchangeable for volunteer time upon request for membership. There have been occasional comments regarding program content. A few people have had a difficult time grasping that not all content is broadcast on NTV is produced at NCTV. What I mean by that is people will call up and say, I love Democracy Now! That's a great program you guys put on. Well, we don't produce Democracy Now! We simulcast Democracy Now! So we see feedback like that. Sometimes people are commenting positively or negatively on things they may see on air that we may or may not have anything to do with in terms of production. This is a pretty common television situation. Okay. Community members want access to more NCTV productions as online videos. More and more media users are embracing the web as a distribution source. We've received mixed comments regarding our web design. Mostly the 2 most common ones are, it's too dark, and also, I love it. Okay. So that's an aesthetic difference of opinion there. Most comments reflect a great like of the visual style, but we've also received feedback that it's too dark. Okay. And that comment about wanting online videos it's probably the most common one we'll receive now. I think it's the next step that everyone is expecting us to take and also that we want to take. Producers seem to love the NCTV workshops. There's an almost universal enjoyment of the experience. Attendees express an overall appreciation of the balance of the workshop between technical and hands-on. We ask people to fill out feedback forms after taking our classes, and we keep those on record. And generally, you know, for some people it's too technical, and some people it's not technical enough. But generally, I think we've attained a fairly good balance for most people. Earlier, I think we were probably a little less hands-on than we could have been, and we sort of altered our philosophy a little bit to provide more of that as we move forward. There's also seeming to be a desire. Most people are more interested in field work. We certainly have people who are interested in studio work, but we have a lot of people who are tending to be drawn more towards field work than work in the studio. There's also been an expressed desire for us to have better supplemental materials. We need better handouts, a better syllabus, something more comprehensive to follow along with while they're participating in this workshop. Better visuals, really, better handouts. Many people were surprised at how much they learned during the experience. We received a number of people who remarked that they participated in other community media programs and been taught nothing, okay, or very little. Both Bryn and Al received favorable comments as open, knowledgeable, and enjoyable. That's not unanimous, but. In recent months, NCTV has drawn a lot of very favorable comparisons to community media centers that are considered among the most successful in the region. In many cases, these opinions cite NCTV as more professional, effective, and providing superior service to the community at large. These comments come from people who have been involved with NCTV and other local media centers as either viewers or producers. In addition, we received feedback from Comcast employees who have noted they have received similar feedback. One regional business cited NCTV as the result of its independent search for the highest quality community TV station in the Valley. Okay, I don't know how comprehensive their search was or what its parameters were, but I'll take it anyway. Staff changes, as I mentioned, and I wish Emily was here. We hired Emily on September 4th after a very inflated amount. We had quite a few resumes to go through. We received over 80 people applying for the job. Emily's been working for just about a month and a half, and she's already an exceptional member of the team. I think she's going to be great. And I think we really, our staff is something we should be very, very proud of. Both Bryn and Emily have been doing a remarkable job. Aside from staffing and previously outlined membership changes, NCTV utilized the services of a number of volunteers. These included Andrew Bombard, who donated his time to clean the NCTV facility, Dan Vasquez and Robin Coolbeth, who helped us sort through a large pile of archived videotape from the previous incarnation of NCTV, and Patrick Sheehan, for some time, donated his skills towards the development of our website. The next section of the presentation is our annual plan. And this is sort of the vision we have for our next year moving forward with NCTV. The first thing I point out in the plan is what we call the threat to community media. The media market around the world continues to change technologically, structurally, and operationally. During this paradigm shift, community media faces a number of threats. NCTV will persevere in educating and mobilizing its membership and the community of Northampton to respond to these challenges. Telecom companies across the U.S. are moving into the market as television providers. Their entrance to this market poses a number of potential challenges to the funding structure, which allows for the existence of organizations like Northampton Community Television. Along with the Alliance for Community Media and regional community media organizations, NCTV proposes and supports a reconsideration of the Telecommunications Act of 1984, revised 1996, by the United States Congress. Community media funding should retain funding levels at minimums equivalent to those presently exist in Massachusetts. Access to community media by viewers should be equitable to other sources from providers and with similar features and quality. This can take place in a competitive environment. The future of community media should be secured by enacting a policy that ensures funding is locally controlled, independently managed, and sufficient. This is a pretty large issue, and along with the emails we sent out regarding this meeting tonight, are some links to various sources that can describe this threat. Essentially, telecom companies are moving in to local markets, becoming television providers, and in doing so are challenging the set standard through which cable companies have come to negotiate right-of-way fees with municipalities like Northampton. So in Massachusetts, that telecom is Verizon, which actually has been doing fairly well. And Massachusetts is a very, very strong community media state. It's probably the strongest community media state. And however, there are some states in the union who are in danger of losing their community media entirely. There have been, Texas, for instance, cut its stations down, all stations to 1% of revenues. That's not something we could really survive on, anything close to what we look like today. So there are a number of states where they've ran into problems with it. Now, in some of those states, there never were strong community media organizations whatsoever. So there was not very much resistance to it or negotiation regarding it, because a lot of those states really didn't have a very large presence anyway. The general opinion as of right now is that there was a bill in the legislature in Massachusetts that Verizon was pushing through and wanted to sort of create a renegotiation with this kind of municipal structure, and there's sort of a feeling that that's dead for now. What I talk about in terms of the Telecommunications Act is a proactive move to get the federal government to sort of create a structure that solves this problem before we get to it, before the discussion is on the table, so we don't have to react to this kind of funding challenge. Instead, we can cut it off in the past. We can present something on the table. The Alliance for Community Media is someone who's constantly addressing this issue, and what we'll be doing is just sending updates out to membership regularly as developments happen. Keep people informed. Staffing for the next year, we do not plan on adding any more staffing at this point. Our operational budget, as of right now, won't really support adding staff for at least a couple years. However, we do intend to ramp up the number of interns we have. We have 2 high school interns right now. We also have 2 college interns we'll be taking on very shortly. And we plan in the next year to start really pursuing Smith College as a source for additional people. Internal development in the next year. One of the areas we really want to develop is workflow. And workflow sort of ties into a number of things we want to do here. We have a 3rd staff person, which allows us to do more, but we need to be very aware of creating efficient working structures, how we approach both production and anything else we do. Workflow is a big catchphrase right now in the technological realm, because we want to distribute our product to a number of different sources, such as the web, and workflow is how you do that. In other words, if you had a model for getting video up on YouTube or Google Video or one of those sites, we would go out, shoot some video, we bring the video back, we dump that video into Final Cut Pro or our editing system, we edit that video, we burn it to DVD, then we need to do what's called transcoding it to an MPEG-4 signal, for instance, then upload that to YouTube. Now, each one of those steps can be fairly involved in terms of time, and by time I don't necessarily mean staff time, but I do mean processor time or computer time. So we're trying to really be aware of solutions that do some of these steps simultaneously, okay? Because we like to start creating online presence that's timely, where things get uploaded quickly, and where it doesn't really slow us down and bog us down. So we'll be working on workflow this year. Branding is another area we look forward to improving in 2009. We'll begin an evolved branding campaign that may include such devices as more station promos, bugs, and possibly merchandise. We built a functioning community media center. Now it's time to more intently develop our identity. We will host or sponsor community events to increase visibility of NCTV in the community. And this way the public will become both more aware and more educated about the nature and existence of NCTV as a resource. You may or may not know about, and its name is eluding me now, the city is offering a workshop.
City School.
A 9-week workshop on the city. And we've been approached to be part of the 9th week, to host the 9th week. And that should help us. That should be one step that we can take. Outreach. NCTV will use 2009 to increase its outreach in the community at large. This will include networking with local businesses, partnering with local community groups, and providing opportunities for local nonprofits to become involved in NCTV. We've already already started our PSA months, where we bring in local nonprofits and shoot public service announcements for them. So we'll be doing more of that and participating much more actively in the Chamber of Commerce as well. Services, web presence. We launched a website in the past 9 months, actually it's 10 months, and met the majority of its express web goals, but one of the largest goals for 0809 is to flesh out this web presence utilizing the website, an attached blog, and various Web 2.0 sites such as Vimeo, Blip TV, YouTube, and MySpace. This goal is directly related to workflow, as I mentioned earlier. There are a number of goals that we want to achieve with our web presence. One is we want to create a space in which membership can publicize and recruit production teams for projects. This means we get a lot of people who ask us to provide coverage for various events. And along with processing that time, what we do is turn those requests around and send out emails to membership indicating that these events are going on, that there are people who want them covered. We hope to try to get membership to do some of that on their own. And not just membership, but also outside community groups who are having events so that they can go and do some of their own recruiting, because it'll save us some staff time and let us do some other things. We'd like to create a workflow within NCTV that allows for regular distribution of local programming to web services that allow viewership to watch NCTV on demand on the web. I've already mentioned this briefly, especially with things like city council meetings or any government coverage, because those programs are so long. That really puts a burden on the workflow. With 10-minute and short little clips, it's a lot easier to to deal with that, but it gets a little trickier when things are 3.5 hours long. We also want to provide a space to generate exposures for donors and underwrites to facilitate fundraising. Classes and certification. NCTV provided ongoing training throughout 2008, at times running 2 classes concurrently while simultaneously providing seminars for high school students and test out opportunities for already accomplished members. We have 2 goals related to training moving forward. One is advanced classes and seminars. This is one of our goals from our last annual plan, that we'll start our first advanced classes before this calendar year ends. So I'm just included them here as a carryover. And also just that we'll continue to revise classes that as we receive responses from membership for both what we want to provide and what the content is of those courses, we'll consider these classes a moving target, constantly evolving. Our relationship with Northampton High School. Expansion of NHS training for faculty. We want to provide expanded opportunities for faculty to acquire an education regarding equipment at the NCTV facility. This includes both video department faculty and other teachers who wish to become involved. Second, we want to encourage the expansion of usage of NCTV facilities by NHS students in and out of the video program. We've already taken steps to this end. And one of our biggest challenges last year was finding scheduling times that were common for NCTV and NHS where there weren't conflicts. So what we did is set aside 1 day a week where we have a dedicated day every single week for NHS so that they know they have pre-scheduled time for the entire year. Okay. And we'll continue to revise the structure if need be under the consideration of school faculty, school and school department administration, staff, and students. Per our last annual plan as well, we will expand our hours of operation to both weekends and evenings. We've hired Emily. She's been on for about a month and a half. And we're sort of still in that, we're still doing a bit of training, but soon we'll have our expanded hours and be able to provide some regular evening times for people who may work during the day and some weekend times for people who may work during the day and are too tired at night to come in. Or any number of reasons. Programming. NCTV produced programming. A lot of this is similar to last year as well. We'll continue to expand production as we can, as time permits for staff. What we do now is look ahead at the next few months and try to pick a few things to produce. We've been extremely busy lately. Just to give you an idea, we have 3 productions going on right now. Emily's covering, as I mentioned earlier, the Booster Parade. We also have a member who's shooting the WGGB presentation of weather explanation over at JFK Middle School. So those are all at 7 o'clock tonight. Okay, so we're pretty busy. Server sharing, the addition of the new access coordinator, Emily. I should mention Emily's the access coordinator. That means Bryn Francis, who was our access coordinator, didn't leave. He's still with us as our production manager. But Emily's access coordinator, one thing she does is deal with FTP content from a number of sources. We did some of this in the past year, but we're doing more of it now. And actually, we already received a number of emails this week about some of our university channel programming, which are lectures taped at Princeton University. And we can FTP those from Princeton University server. They gave us a password, and we provide a variety from people. Madeline Albright was on this week. We're talking about a number of different global issues.
Related to that, just a quick question. If we had people at Smith who wanted us to tape their lectures, would that be locally produced programming and count toward our hours?
Sure.
Because if we, I mean.
I think we've talked to Smith before, and there are. Yes, but yes. The answer to your question is yes.
They have their own production facility.
They do have their own production facility as well. Yes.
Right.
Same with UMass actually too.
Yeah.
UMass does lecture series as well. I mean, if that counts towards our quota, you know, the fish tank.
That's right. Mention that in a second too. And in addition to the Princeton server, there is a statewide mass access server, which is currently in beta. I mentioned earlier we volunteered to participate in this beta test. Right now it's only in beta download, so you can download some content from it. There are 2 or 3 organizations that are providing right now just government content. Okay, this is a state-sponsored server. What they're doing, the intention is to promote transparency of government in the state of Massachusetts. So they're taking some government coverage from community media centers around Massachusetts. Everyone uploads this content to a server, and we can download it for use. Now, you may be asking yourself, do we really want to watch more city council meetings from other cities? But it's not just city council meetings. It's, you know, it could be statewide organizations as well. Maybe the lieutenant governor is somewhere talking about an issue that's pertinent to everyone in the state. So it's that kind of access. And I think the idea, I mean, ultimately, you know, there's talk that it would be nice to share other kinds of content as well on it. But we're going to beta test when they get down to the upload, when they go to the next stage. Okay, we volunteered to do so. There's also a national service run by the Alliance for Community Media that's similar in concept, except it's not just government content, it's any kind of coverage from community media centers. They're still in beta as well. Okay, but moving forward, you know, it's possible that we can be drawing on programming from across the United States and also sharing programming across the United States. We do regular FTPs at night. You know, that's part of our workflow, so we'll set them up. They take a long time to do as well if you ever try one. And so that will continue to expand for us. Public domain and outside arts programming, we've run, there's a site called archive.org you may or may not be aware of. One interesting thing about archive.org is it's one of the few official it's actually considered a library. So you can apply for grants with archive.org that are for library organizations. But archive.org, you know, they're trying to archive the entire net, sort of the idea. We've gotten some things like Prelinger films. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Prelinger archives, but we were showing, we showed like a 1950s, 60s PSA, long form PSA about avoiding nuclear attacks during the Cold War. Duck and cover, right? Which encouraged people to dive for curbs when they heard loud noises. So it's a social commentary piece. It's interesting and it's free to run. And so we're digging up that stuff too and finding some things of occasional interest to the community and showing that stuff as well. Differentiation of channels 12 and 15. This is a big goal for this year. Right now, you'll notice we generally are running the exact same thing on both channels. We will occasionally run some different things. We had the week that the Notre Dame group is here for Northampton Design Week. Member shot almost all of those sessions, okay, or one a day at least. And we also had Northampton Youth Football that was shot that week. We had a member shoot those programs. So we wanted to run them in prime time, and they're both long programs. So in that situation, we were in one on 12 and one on 15. So we've done some things like that, and we've had some programming we really think is very visible that people will watch. intend to really try to differentiate these programs, and at this point, you know, the plan is to use simulcast satellites to do so. Okay. To fill 12 with some varieties of programming. Finally, programming hours on NCTV. One of our goals is to continue to expand the number of local original programming hours we carry. That's currently at 7 hours a week. It can be difficult to predict an accurate increase, in part due to insufficient historical data, and in part because it's difficult to estimate the kind of curve we should expect, given that we operate within a somewhat closed system with a finite audience and volunteer base. What I mean by that is, we can't, you know, we're not going to end up with 1 million members of NCTV, obviously, because there aren't enough people in town to do that in the city. So, however, one of our big goals is to get our third channel, acquire our third channel from Comcast. To do that, we'll need to produce roughly 35 additional hours of first-run, non-repeat, non-alphanumeric programming per week. And we plan on doing that so that we can get this process started. And our plan is to shoot a fishbowl overnight, to buy some fish, and to set up a fish tank, which will be first-run local programming, and we'll run it. It'll run 7 hours a day to 8 hours a day, probably a very early morning. And in doing that, we should fulfill there's precedent that we will fulfill our requirements through doing something like that and acquire a third channel. And I should note that one of the important things about getting a third channel isn't just that we are so full to the brim of programming that it's that necessary. That's definitely one reason, but the other reason is that it's bandwidth.
Capacity.
Yeah. So when we sit down to a table to talk about high definition, for instance, we need as much bandwidth as we can get. Okay, it's a valuable commodity. So that concludes that.
Is there a time limit after which we would not be able to get the third channel?
There's no time limit built into our contract. However, it will take some time to get that third channel even after we meet that requirement. We have to run, the way it works is it's 80%, for an 8-hour period, 80% of that 8-hour period during the weekdays. What that means is Monday through Friday, 7 hours of that day has to be first run programming. I should also note that almost no television company in the world does this. It manages to do this with huge staffs. Okay.
It was set up to be
Yeah.
hard to achieve.
I don't think ESPN does it. I mean, I'd have to look, but even something like that, it's we show an awful lot more original content than a lot of people do. Okay? So the way it's defined in these terms. Okay. So after we run 6 months, meet that goal for 6 months, it will take another 12 months, I believe, to meet their recommendations. So you're talking about a year and a half process from start to finish, which is fine, but we should get rolling on it.
But does that mean we have to keep doing the fish tank after the 6 months?
As far as I know, no, I don't see anything in the language that indicates that. Now, you may be surprised to find out that we get some real fish tank fans. It may sound. There's precedent for that as well. And if you go back to Springfield, Comcast in Springfield, but before it was Comcast, when it was Continental, the Falcons, the Falcon channel. That was like one of the most. They received so many phone calls about that Falcon channel, and they ended up taking out. The Falcons flew away. Okay. They had a camera up there.
Basically watching the Falcons.
They were watching Falcons.
Yes.
People
Yeah.
loved the Falcons. In Wilbraham as well, where this is sort of the approach they used to get their third channel. I think it's their third channel. Could have been their second, but when they took on this kind of programming, very few people wanted it to go away.
Huh. Wow.
Like the firefights.
There we go.
Yeah, I just had a question about, you were saying before about the modulators breaking down,
Yeah.
repairing and all that. Did you do a price thing with, how much it would be if you just got a new modulator as opposed to repairing the ones that we do have?
A new modulator of the same unit, to replace the same unit with the same unit, is approximately $800. We did repair 2 units. We moved forward and repaired 2 of them. This is the 3rd unit we sent to CADCO, who makes these modulators. They're having a problem nailing down the problem in this 3rd unit. And they're suggesting that the kind of tests involved to find the problem, you know, when you get to a certain level of electronics, it's almost disposable. So they're saying at this point, it would take X amount of hours to tech it out that it wouldn't be worth it.
That's all I was wondering.
Yeah.
It's cost effective to just get a new unit.
What we did is we went back to them, and this is where we are with that, is that we asked them how much, just for informational purposes, how much a stereo modulator would cost. We broadcast everything in mono right now. And then also how much a high definition modulator would cost. Not because I don't anticipate there's any way we can afford to buy a high definition modulator, but it would be nice to know while we're talking, we're in this conversation, sort of where that number is, just to give us a sort of a sense of place.
I was going to ask about the fish tank idea. What about webcam kind of program, like the Coolidge Bridge, for example? Does it have to be live? Can it be like a delay?
It doesn't have to be live. It can be a delay. I think, and one of the reasons the staff sort of had some brainstorming about this, and one of the reasons we chose a fish tank is because it's a more controlled environment. It's like a studio in a box.
Then the Coolidge Bridge.
Well, so that if there's bad weather, you know, if you put a camera outside somewhere, you have to worry about things like weather or vandalism or a host of other things that when you have a fish tank inside, hopefully you don't have to worry about. Hopefully you don't kill fish very easily. Hopefully we're good at raising them.
The kids could be watching.
That's right. So, but yeah, to answer your question, it doesn't have to be fish. It could be a number of things. Now, when you're talking about a webcam, you run into some different issues with bandwidth to worry about. But we could do some other things too.
Yeah. Just a couple of comments. The sharing community media, I think that's a really interesting idea, because even though we are Northampton Community Television, a lot of us work and play and know people in other areas, and it seems to me that that's one of the ways that we can really have a base. There are other community programs or other municipality, even government, you know, in surrounding towns that a lot of people might want to watch because it would have an impact here, or because, for instance, they work part-time or full-time in another town. So I just think that's a really interesting idea, or at least have it a way that is available. Not that we're going to watch everybody's city council meetings, you know, for hours. But I think there might be more interest in that than we know, and we might figure out where it is. And just in my role here, I just want to say thank you for the Northampton High School stuff that's been going on. And I think that there was some real fear would students take over, would there be enough time for community programming? And here we're sort of encouraging more use by students and clearly seeing them as a resource. And I happen to go to a lot of classical music concerts, and when I'm the youngest person in the audience, it kind of scares me. And I think that this is one of those media where we want to have everybody involved, and my belief from the beginning was that the more we get the kids involved, the healthier the organization will be. So I just want to thank you for doing that, and you know, that's a real plus to me.
Yeah, I
Just wanted to make that
as
comment.
the high school video teacher, it really, the kids are, now they know they have that day, they're generating more ideas for using the studio
That's
than
true.
we have yet, so it's working.
And they'll bring their parents in.
Yeah,
Well, and we love the creative energy that they can bring.
yeah, so.
Well,
Yeah, I was wondering when you're gonna have more different programming on other channel, instead of having,
On 12, you mean?
yeah.
You know, part of the resolution to that is, part of that is the discussion we started having earlier is related to that about Al Jazeera, and that we need to make a decision about how much money we can afford to spend to put up these satellites to simulcast. The idea would be to fill a lot of 12 with simulcast material, and some of the major programming sources we're looking at include the Research Channel, okay, which does a lot of science programming, and and a lot of mostly science programming of various kinds. Okay, Classic Art Showcase, which shows Classic Art Showcase is like MTV for classic arts. Okay, so they have ballet, they have film, they have classical music, they have documentary films. This is Emily Goodwin, everyone. This is our access coordinator.
Hold on.
Coming to work.
And Classic Art Showcase, they chop those things up into 3-minute bits, so it's digestible. So you don't have to sit down and watch an opera for 45 minutes. You can watch a 3-minute aria, section of an aria. And it was started as a foundation from a gentleman who thought there wasn't enough arts education for kids in the United States, classical arts education. Al Jazeera is another source. They recently shut their satellite down. That doesn't mean they're gone. It means that they're choosing a different delivery system. All of their feeds are now online.
That's actually an association with Bill Ayer. Sorry.
There you go.
He was at the same meeting as Barack Obama. Just so we're clear on that.
So that's the goal, is to try to target some things like that, get some educational and cultural programming, and a lot of that kind of programming you would receive if you didn't have cable television, if you have satellite. Okay, that's what you have. You have groups like that. Interestingly enough, we've also contacted C-SPAN about the possibility of simulcasting some C-SPAN sometimes during the day. We haven't received a response from them. I'm not sure why. It's been a couple of weeks. We've sent them 2 emails. So that's another way we're trying to think outside the box to approach this.
Is that something that Comcast will get a little cranky about, given that that's part of the package that they sell?
Very possibly, that's a sort of an expected return I would anticipate from that conversation, but I think it's worth exploring anyway. Maybe I don't know what the parameters of their contracts are. I think that's one of the things we're dealing with.
I suspect that part of establishing legislative rules that are associated through FCC, the whole idea was to keep government open, particularly for people who have cable. And it seems to be, I actually think that C-SPAN should be part of their basic package, their most elemental package. And barring that, if we can show it on our programming, I think all the better for us. That means we're fulfilling the mission they were supposed to.
Especially for if they're very, very large, we can pick and choose what we would show on C-SPAN.
Right. So there's 3
Channel-
C-SPAN channels, right?
At least 2, yeah.
Channel 44, which is the extra PBS channel in Boston, covers all of the Massachusetts Senate and House.
There you go. Okay, that's
That
something
would
to
be
this.
probably worth.
There used to be there may still be a way of getting that programming via feed, and it's fed. I'm trying to think of what it was called now. You could get that feed at Channel 57 at GBY in Springfield, and there are some other places that got it, but I don't know if we're on that trunk able to receive that programming. Okay, and also that group lost some funding, I know, in recent years. But that's something to explore, and I know that state government programming is something that a lot of people are very interested in receiving as well. Like, is it CNA? Does CNA do statewide stuff? CNA and NECN. I think some of those moved to some different tiers.
Yes.
Okay, so it's those kinds of things. Link TV is another one. Is something we can't carry, I know, because we don't have rebroadcast rights. So,
Are there any questions from the membership? Folks have any thoughts or questions? Bonnie, you want to go up to the microphone at the podium?
I don't necessarily have a question.
Or a statement, that's fine.
I was really happy to hear all the things that Al's planning for this year with getting the high school kids in and some interns and Smith and all those things that you talked about too. I'm a member. I've been a member for since January, February, and I've produced shows. I've helped with camera work with other people producing shows, and I just feel like we need to gather more people from the community. I'm pretty active on different boards, and I'm members of different organizations, and so I'm interested in their events. But also, there's a lot of things happening in Northampton that I would have thought, well, this would be great to see on TV, you know? But I don't always get the opportunity or the time to do that. So, you know, I think we really, you guys as board members maybe could help out. I think Al and Bryn and Emily are doing a great job, and they're busy. But to try to reach out to more people, there's plenty of people in the community that, you know, volunteer, they are involved in the community, and even if they're attached to like an organization, they might want to, you know, do something with the media to promote that organization. Things like if it's something simple like that, or an event. I just think we need more people volunteering and involved.
One thing there's not a shortage of is nonprofit systems in this area.
Exactly.
And social service programming that tends to not be all that evident to people in the community. I think you're right. I think that anything we could do to enhance, or at least reveal to the community that there is a community of people out there doing volunteer work in social service programming that otherwise doesn't get noticed, that would be a great service.
But I think that what she said about needing more community producers to be involved with that, because a lot of those organizations don't have the extra person who has the time to come and learn how to do video, you know, produce video. So that getting people who would produce it for them, work with them and produce it.
Anyone, any other thoughts? John?
Good evening, everybody. I just was hoping that there would be a way to bring the producers and the crews together in a more effective way. And I'll speak for myself. I've taken the training, and I have an idea for a show, but how to find the crew to put together the show on the technical level is a continual problem. Who do I call? Where? If I could have a list of people that I could call. When I lived in out west, out in Missoula, Montana, they just had a list. You could call these available people. There was a bulletin board that you could go and you could get names. So I would really like to put together a show, but I've been a little confused as to how to get the technical people together with me, the producer. So hopefully we can work on that over the next 12 months. Thanks.
Well, and I think what John's saying is true, that we, even last year for our radio plan for last year, one of our goals is to build producer teams. Because I think when they go through the workshop experience, for a lot of people, one, it's intimidating in general. And two, after going through the workshop, a lot of people are sort of left with, well, what now? Kind of feeling, okay?
Right.
And so what we've done up to now is really, when people approach us with a show, and John's given us material to send out, we'll send out emails to everyone who's been through our class, anyone who's a producer, whether they've been through their class, even if they're certified, so that not necessarily through our class, but could have tested out, anyone who's allowed to use our gear, and we send out these mailings, and we say, you know, here's this show summary, this person's looking for this person's looking for this, etc. Now, sometimes that generates responses and sometimes it doesn't, and I think there are a number of factors involved with that. One is, we are still a fledgling organization, and we don't have a tremendous number of people who are really, really confident about some more complicated projects. And I think, in John's case, you probably have one of the more complicated projects. I think that's part of it. And I think also, you know, the speculation, maybe we're sending out too many emails and people are getting swamped, and they don't have time to read through all these things. One thing we're noticing as staff is it's harder for us to get people to volunteer for government coverage And this is something we anticipated, but it's harder for us to get people to respond to government coverage than it is for other things we do. We're looking to cover the haunted train ride, okay, is one thing. They're having a haunted train ride in Little Park. Now there were a ton of respondents to that who are interested in helping cover something like that, okay? Because part of this is what volunteers are interested in doing.
Covering something like this, however, like,
It's not, depending upon who you are, this may have more or less value to you.
You
We could call
should
that
not
haunted.
forget the high school kids.
Right.
Because we have very competent field shooters. I mean, if anything you're doing is during the school day, I can cover you.
I know this is a studio production that we're talking about, I
Yeah,
think.
but the kids are there and can do
Right.
studio stuff too. I mean, all the kids are
Right.
there.
Speaking to this, the idea of having a blog or having a discussion group or a message board is something we need to sort of generate more conversation from member to member.
or something like a Craigslist in a microcosm equivalent,
Yeah.
where people can talk about the project and solicit people, and they can review the board and see if it's a project they're interested in.
Right.
Some sort.
So we really want to encourage that kind of discussion, and we're aware that it's an issue, and so this is sort of the model that we're hoping to bring into the form.
One of the thoughts that I had to open up the process a little bit was to have an event where producers were invited and crew members were invited to the same function. And the producers actually made a pitch to the crews and said, this is basically my concept. And they basically say, this is my thoughts, this is what I'm envisioning. Is there anyone out there who would like to work on this? So that it becomes more personal than something that's just on the email. Which I know that I can be pretty passionate about projects that I've had, and I think that I could probably sell it better in person than I could on an email. And I think it would be a great way to network, and a great way for people to just get to know each other, and word of mouth could spread a lot. And I think it would just be more personal than something that's on the email. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
A mixer.
Well, when we talk about crews,
Cocktail
we
party.
talking about, do we actually have something we consider enough people who could actually be broken up into crew clusters that would work with production crews? Do we have a census that actually works that would
The census.
a dedicated or devoted or committed or somewhat committed pool of producers or people who are capable of checking out the equipment?
Isn't all the same people though? I mean, the producers also,
Producers are the crew, and I think
Yeah.
in that
It's the same group.
there's no distinction necessarily between the producers and the crew, but there are people who are. I think that when John's referring to producers and crew, he means and correct me if I'm wrong, but producer is somebody who's less interested in directing the technical side of it, and crew being someone who's more inclined to take care of the technical matters. And so producer, I think in that sense, in a more traditional role of producer in a film or television production.
I think though, because we're so new, that we don't really have that feeling of community yet, I mean, it's something that we have to build. And before, when the cable station was over in the other place, and then, people tended to know each other for a longer period of time, and the producers got to know each other, and we kind of like hang out there and be there and talk, and then say, I have this, that I'm interested in doing, and, would you like to help or something? So I think because, we're just starting, we're building up to a community.
Yeah.
And the more people we get involved in the community, then, we have a better pool of people to, help each other out with things.
Chuck?
I just had another thought. Excuse me. In addition to the producers, sharing their vision of what they would like to do, whether it's a documentary or a narrative or whatever it is, the crew members could also stand up and say, you know, I'm a cameraman, I've done this kind of documentary, I've done this kind of short film or feature, and they're sort of, I like, and they could say, well, I like this kind of movie, I like this kind of director, I like this kind of camera work, and you're kind of shopping. Everyone's sort of shopping around, looking for, because as a producer, I'm always looking for camera people. I'm always thinking in terms of who does really good sound, who does, you know. So to have a forum like this, however often a year, I don't know how many times a year, but periodically could be a great, I mean, it could be a lot of fun. But it also could serve a very practical purpose in, you know, producers saying, oh, no, I'm not interested in that style. I don't want black and white. I don't want that. But this person could be really great. And so there's, you know, it could be a way to open up the process, because I felt as though, I felt a little frustrated because I felt as though I had some ideas and they sort of got sent out and then I never heard anything. But I felt as if I could talk to a cameraman or camerawoman, I might be able to connect better, you know. So.
We discussed it actually, even in the nascent stages of this group, was to create a network of people of all disciplines. And that includes film, actual film, and people who did sound, and people who did lighting systems and theater stuff. But people who are filmmakers, writers, and the like, and create a network. We would be the network point by which people would try to get together and do exactly what you're trying to do, John, at some level, or do it, or to network just to discuss working on developing scripts or developing production systems or so on. And just but the thing is, I think one of the things is, your idea sounds perfectly fine. I do like the idea personally of establishing an accessible network, a catalog, a directory, if you will, but something that's even more dynamic in a web format that maybe comes through our site, that allows people to get in contact with other people without having Al or the staff here do the organizing and manipulation. So
The combination, I think, would be.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think ultimately, though, the idea is to get the community to function as a community, and we're the pond, if you will, where they go drink. We don't have to scoop the buckets of water and serve people necessarily, but people will come to here and use us as a resource. Was the goal that we discussed when we started developing this system. I think your idea is a great idea. I think that's for a number of reasons, not the least of which is actually, if I could piggyback on that, we would promote our system here at NCTV. There's something we can combine resources in that respect as a special event that would promote us as an asset to the community, which is one that we still struggle to try and convince the community that we are indeed just that. So, does anyone else?
Well, I think we should go back to Al Jazeera, because I didn't want to put that on.
Let's go back to Al Jazeera.
But, I mean, I think
You're right, the
people have
conversation
talked
that Al was
about,
talking about, the challenges that were.
and I don't know if Al wants an input on that for people, but I didn't want to cut it off in, because I think.
Yeah, this thing with Al Jazeera has taken on many lives. In fact, Al is probably now the most. Al Jazeera. Al knows more about Al Jazeera programming and systems and way to deliver Al Jazeera than any other person in the country. And people are already referring to him to try and find, right? And are you the contact point of everyone trying to figure out how to?
Well, we've had other people contact us regarding how to contact Al Jazeera. So we have had a room.
Be careful.
Well, did we want to accept the plan before we move on?
That's not a bad idea.
Oh, is that a good idea?
In fact, I would entertain from the board a motion to accept.
I move we accept Al's report and plan.
Robin has moved first. Does anyone second? Pam? Okay. All right. Second. And this is a vote among the board members. You cat people are just.
Or window dressing.
He's just pretty up the place, that's all. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Any nays? No, so it's unanimous. Yeah, so the plan is advanced, accepted by the board. So, why don't, do you wanna do a,
I can talk a little bit about sort of where we are, and that is that we've been offered. Al Jazeera has agreed to fund $5,500 of an installation that would include the sort of the basic installation fee, including we need a forklift, or not a forklift, but a
pilot jack? Jack,
cherry picker. Thank you.
a low jack.
My reference is too far off. And in exchange for accepting that $5,500, they would like assurance that we would broadcast for a year, 4 hours a day, approximately, of Al Jazeera, which is our estimate for when we put our plan together for how many hours of programming we have from them compared to all these other simulcasts. That's sort of what we approximate, about 4 hours a day.
And we can put it on at any time during the day?
Yeah, we can put it on any time during the day. The way we reached that figure was 24 hours minus 8 hours for the fish tank. Okay. and we divided that by 4, the remaining 16 hours, thinking that we would have a research channel, Al Jazeera, classic arts, and then a 4th slot that we could fill with anything we wanted.
This would be one channel.
This would be one channel, channel 12. So,
Does the research channel and classic arts and other such programming depend upon the satellite dish that Al Jazeera is offering to install?
no, this is 3 different satellite dishes, one for each one of these.
But
Each
Al
one of these.
Jazeera would be paying for
It's a cherry pick.
Right, what happens is because there's a upfront costs. So those base fees and upfront costs are included in the figure Al Jazeera would be paying. So they would be, at the same time we installed that satellite, we could install 2 more satellites at a significantly lower rate. Now, that doesn't mean we can't install these without, agreeing to carry Al Jazeera. Okay.
It just removes the subsidy for part of the installation cost.
That's right.
Okay.
And there has been an expressed interest in carrying it. Now, there hasn't been an expressed interest in not carrying it, but I don't think the general public probably has had this discussion or been exposed to this discussion. The other thing is that we've recently been contacted by Comcast since the meeting we had with the CAB board, and expressed a desire that they receive the information that we have regarding where Al Jazeera is simulcast across the country. There are 3 places that it's simulcast across the country. And I mentioned World Link Television, or it's called Link TV. Okay, it shows one program. Burlington, Vermont, which shows it on their community TV station. And thirdly is a group called Buckeye Television, okay, in Ohio. Now, Burlington carried this programming, and then there was a community response against the carriage of this programming, and they had a discussion, a community media-wide discussion, a membership discussion, voted on it, and voted to keep it. Comcast was concerned because Al Jazeera is a commercial entity, and we're a nonprofit organization carrying the programming of a commercial entity. Burlington TV is also a is a nonprofit organization carrying it as a commercial entity, or carrying programming produced by a commercial entity. So is Link TV. Buckeye Television is not. Buckeye Television carries Al Jazeera as a channel, okay, on their package that they offer. Similarly, and some of this is new information for me, but similarly, Burlington is, Burlington owns their cable provider. They are their own cable provider. So there is a little difference, right, in that we would be the first community media station in the United States, and carried by a private cable provider to carry Al Jazeera television. Now, there's a precedent for nonprofits carrying this programming. We wouldn't show any commercials on this programming. They have commercials on Al Jazeera on the hour. Okay, I sat and watched it for 3-4 hours the other day, or listened to it mostly actually. I have to confess, I had to do other stuff, but so it's just on the hour. We would program around that. Obviously, we cannot show commercial content on the air. So we would be, there's a discussion you have as to whether this constitutes commercial programming there. Now, that's a pretty wide discussion. You could say, if HBO gave us permission to show The Sopranos, could we air it? Okay. Comcast, I sent that information to Comcast. I know that they're forwarding it to their lawyers in New Hampshire, where they're based. I'm sure that they're going to, I asked Steve Fitzgibbons, who asked for the information. I asked him to keep us informed as to, what's happening on their side, what kind of discussions they're having. And he's going to do that. So, that's where we are.
We should possibly discuss it with the lawyer here, too.
That's, I think, a very good idea. So this would be a pretty groundbreaking, in some sense, move for us. We have generated community interest. I think there's a lot of
Al,
relevance.
can I just go over with you?
Yeah.
Link TV is a profit-making,
Link TV is a nonprofit.
so what's the difference?
But they're not subsidized by a privately held.
Well, and I'm not sure there is a difference. There may be a difference, there may not, but I'm trying to give you as much information as I can
So
for
they're
background.
nonprofit, but we don't know if they're subsidized by a community?
Link TV is a
Like,
Oh, by
Or
Comcast.
by a telecom.
or cable.
right.
They're not subsidized, Link TV's not subsidized by a telecom.
Link TV is a lot like the Research Channel or like Classic Art Showcase. They're a nonprofit organization that shows programming on satellite. Okay, they carry some Al Jazeera programming. Similarly to how Free Speech Television carries some Democracy Now! Programming. Can we just break for 1 second? I just want to discuss one thing before Bonnie and Carl leave.
Yeah.
I'm getting equipment.
Oh, you're getting,
Coming back.
you're coming back?
The Alex's equipment.
Oh,
Bringing it to you.
and you'll be back here?
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Okay,
Is
okay.
that okay?
So
Yes.
you're the last two members.
Yeah. We'll be right back.
So, okay, so that's Link TV. Link TV goes and they assemble documentaries from all over the world and they provide them. Okay, they're on satellite. They're a nonprofit organization like Free Speech TV.
Okay.
Okay, Buckeye Television is a cable provider that
Like
carries
Comcast.
Al Jazeera like Comcast,
Warner,
Okay.
small.
like Time Warner,
Yeah.
like Adelphia. They're a small group
Okay.
that is, managing to survive and showing Al Jazeera as a choice.
So the home shopping channel, we're also showing Al Jazeera.
Right.
Okay,
Half
and
the day it's on
Sports
Burlington,
programs, yeah, exactly.
Burlington is their own cable provider?
Yes. Now they
And
show it
it's
on.
like NCTV, except they don't have Comcast, their money is.
They made an investment in
They all
the
know
cable
it
price.
does.
They want the cable.
This was a long time ago.
Yeah, okay.
They decided that when they were in renegotiation, that instead of negotiating with, I don't know who it was at the time, perhaps Comcast, for instance, that they'd rather purchase your Continental, they'd rather buy their own system and run it, much like Holyoke Gas and Electric provides their own
Right,
utilities.
right, right.
Okay.
Wow.
I think it had a lot of foresight.
And the
Yeah.
Public Service Board in Vermont that manages all of the community access is open to that idea.
So Vermont has a much different structure than we do,
Yeah.
just like Connecticut has
Mixed-
a very different
mixed
structure. than we do.
Okay, so that's why we're different.
Well, we're unique in that respect in that we receive subsidies from Comcast.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And because we exist largely due to the fact that the FCC makes that a requirement in order for Comcast to continue to have essentially established monopoly.
Right. Comcast pays a right-of-way fee
Right.
to the city.
Right.
The city, in turn, must use that right-of-way fee if requested by the public for what we do, and we're
Cable
exclusive
access,
contract.
right.
So nobody's similar, and we're more normal than in
Yeah.
so many respects. That's the
Yeah.
standard structure for
Yes.
community access television. It's to be subsidized by a larger provider.
Right.
In this respect, though, we're the only one currently pursuing Al Jazeera television for broadcast. I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Now CCTV, which is which is a station on Brattleboro carrying it, is their community media station. The difference being that
They,
the provider also happens to be
From,
by the government.
right, okay.
I guess, and that's, I wasn't sure what other people's questions were, but Alan and I have had a little bit of discussion on this. I'm just sort of wondering what the pros and cons are of having Al Jazeera, and I don't mean to be ignorant, but I'm not even sure what Al Jazeera programming looks
So
like.
I'll just listen to 3 hours, why don't you
So,
tell us?
I mean, and I think that it, just because of, that it's Al Jazeera, it seems to me that there's some inherent, I don't even want to say controversy, but, you know, some questions that the public might raise, and so it seems to me it's something that our membership might want to weigh in, or at least we want to take some advisory from them. But I don't even know what that programming is, and I wouldn't care if it was the Disney Channel. In fact, I might even have more problems with the Disney Channel. You know, of being required to show somebody else, required as opposed to choosing to show. So I'm just sort of wondering what the programming is, and that was really my question to you, you know.
There's an excellent documentary film about Al Jazeera. It's called Control Room.
Right.
It's not entirely up to date because I think it was.
It was during the original Iraq invasion.
Right.
It
It's
was
available
covered
on
video
video, by the way.
in
I mean,
2003.
I have some general understandings. I'm just saying, I think that that's the issue, is what would we be getting if we.
Just so people know, there's also a network in the Middle East, and we're not connected online here. I think it's Al-Qura. It's the U.S. subsidized
Right.
complement. It's the U.S. subsidized network in the Middle East. Okay, that broadcasts there as well.
It's like Voice of America,
It's
though.
like,
Just so people are aware of what's out there and what, you know,
Well, I
we
mean,
approach them as well.
Pam's question is certainly reasonable, because actually, as you pointed out, there were some people, for instance, like in Buckeye Network, who probably took offense to having what they may have construed as a perspective type news, where deluding themselves into thinking their news is without perspective, but at the same time, but you're right, I don't think this comes to.
Almost doesn't matter what the title is.
I think it doesn't. I think it comes with controversy on that level to some extent. The only way, honestly, I think, you know, as we know how things tend to work in these respects, I don't think we can invite the public to come talk about it. I think that's not a terrible idea. I suspect you'll get this, and at the point that we start airing it, and people take offense, then that's probably when the conversation will be.
But that's why I'm asking,
Well,
you know,
maybe
what it is,
Al
because
can
we want to know
answer-
what our
let's hear from Al.
pros and cons
I
are.
would say that ultimately, the rationale behind the reason to carry, aside from the fact that some people have requested it, is that it's one of the largest news organizations in the world. It is the largest news organization, most watched news organization in the Middle East, and we're at a historical time where we're certainly connected to that area of the world regionally. That it's a smaller and smaller Earth that we live on, and that this is a news channel that people in the United States are not able to get. Period. That's it. If this was broadcast from the moon, and it was the most watched television show on the moon, and there were, you know, however many people living there, it's a different perspective that people don't have access to it. So in that sense, I think it almost relates to our mission in terms of the things you said earlier about how Northampton is connected to the communities outside of it as well. Well, and so in that sense, I think we're sort of, you know, it's somewhat based upon the popularity of the channel. That's part of it. It's that, you know, it may or may not be an argument that you agree with that a network that has achieved popularity is representative of what's going on there. But being someone who doesn't live in the Middle East, doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience as to what it's like to be from there, you know, there's not a lot of ways to go about it aside from that. So I think that's sort of the rationale, is that it allows people to have exposure to, agree with, disagree with, undecided, whatever, just to have exposure to this programming that's news from a region of the world where...
That's really my question. It's news programming?
It's all
That
news.
was- yes.
It's news.
It's
Very
all
CNN.
news. I didn't know if they did other stuff besides.
Well, they do documentary programming as well, but they don't do you're not going to see soap operas, and you're not going to.
No.
But you'll see, it is very similar to CNN.
Sports.
Well, I watch a lot of BBC now.
But well, it's not too dissimilar to BBC News as well. It does have sports, it has lifestyle stuff, it has, but it is from a perspective, as Al said, that we're not used to seeing. That, in that respect, may, of course, as we said, also generate a controversial reaction.
And isn't this Al Jazeera America?
This is Al Jazeera, it's Al Jazeera International,
It's international.
okay, which they sometimes call Al Jazeera English.
English,
okay.
All right.
That's what I was-
Yeah, now, that means it's in English. There are 3 different major offices that Al Jazeera operates out of. One is in Washington DC, one of them is in London, and one of them is in Qatar. And I cannot recall the city name, but so during the day, basically the programming is Al Jazeera Washington DC, 1 hour of that. Al Jazeera London, 1 hour of that. Al Jazeera Qatar, 1 hour of that. All in English. Okay, this is what international shows is the English version. Now, some of these anchors who are former BBC anchors, some of them are former CBS anchors or Aaron Nightline anchors. There was one gentleman who quit who was their face for a while, and there was some controversy over his quitting as well. I think the board was sent out an email link to that. But this is so. I don't know if that helps. That's what the
No,
program is like.
I just think it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
Anytime where someone wants to give us money and they want something back,
Yeah.
that's my concern. What's our fiduciary and then, responsibility?
In terms of their programming, they preface each segment by saying, let's look at the things that we have in common as opposed to our differences. And then, like they'll have a topical discussion about what's going on with families, education, or the economy. But, they look at it from a world view.
I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I just think that this is,
It's
I
very
can
informative.
hear that there might be someone saying, what is this? Because it isn't something we even in Northampton know
Well,
about.
here's the thing,
And
is
what might the liabilities be
we don't have
for that money?
we don't have other news feeds into, so essentially we will be taking on as Al Jazeera, Democracy Now! So we'll be taking on as Democracy Now! And Al Jazeera as their perspectives, news perspectives that will be aired on NCTV.
We show Army News Watch as well.
Oh, we do?
What is that?
Okay.
Boy, Army.
Oh, I
Watch, I didn't know.
That's,
I
okay.
don't know if Emily's can tell us the answer to that. But I think it's near Democracy Now! On one of the days.
Now, is that an Army?
The Armed Forces
Looks
produced it.
like the.
It's a half-an-hour show. As a matter of fact, we were pursuing this thing called High Honey Campaign, which was assembling wives, family, sons, daughters of service people, servicemen and servicewomen overseas, and inviting them to come and say, "Hi, honey," and then they would replay this on Army News Watch. So Army News Watch is distributed and played at Armed Forces bases across the world, and so that they could see their families on television. We contacted the local veterans office, and everyone from Western Mass is home. So we didn't follow
Not
through.
everybody.
Not everybody.
Well, this is what, okay,
But
all
the
of the
National
stations.
Guard is home.
The National
Guard is
There's
home.
plenty of kids in Western Mass, I can tell you.
Then we should talk about it, because it's an ongoing campaign, and is it Steve in Veterans
Steve
Affairs?
Connors.
Steve Connors
I
is
spoke-
veteran.
I spoke to Steve and forwarded him the information, because he had some contacts. It's something we wanted to do, something that city council could do too, but we were more interested in having, no offense, city council, but we were more interested in having families.
Local family.
And we're still interested in doing it, just that we haven't
Well, my
received.
daughter's still there for another 9 months, and I'm in a military families connect group with other people from the area. These kids
Okay.
are there.
Okay, we
You
should
know
talk.
that.
Well, this is actually, I didn't know that we had that, and I think that's excellent. I think that what we have, I think then we can make a legitimate case that given the amount of perspective and the cross perspective that we have, that we're fulfilling our obligations to try and meet a broad spectrum of news
And
influences.
speaking as a military family member, I'm very interested in Al Jazeera. I support that, so.
And I think there's a distinct possibility that if we do get to the point where we're actually airing, that there will be some objections, just as we get objections about democracy now, and I'm sure that we'll get objections about the Army programming as well. I think, and you measure the temperature of your community, but I think that's our very distinct mission is to provide as much media influences, a diversity of media influences, and that I think we can make a case for Al Jazeera, should we get to it. There are a lot of hoops, not the least of which is the fact that we will be breaking ground. We will be establishing ourselves. I think you can expect that it might actually even generate some news as a result. And I could suspect, I also
Put a camera
suspect
on
that,
it so it's local programming.
yeah, well, I also suspect that we're going to hear from Comcast, and they're going to be a little resistant.
See, that to me, that sounds like that may be our first stumbling block. I mean, that there's a whole lot of little things in the way here.
I think that if it does make news, that's the last thing Comcast.
$5,000.
But,
And you can always tell anybody that objects to anything we're showing, that they can come and produce
Oh, yeah.
a program that
well, that
answers.
has come up too.
Yeah,
That's our
that's-
standard demo.
yeah.
But, so, maybe, are you, I mean, we've talked about Al Jazeera in the past, basically said, pursue a which you can, each time, last time we were talking about streaming it.
Yes.
At one point,
And if you want an update on streaming, I can give you a quick one, and it's basically that everyone thinks people are more optimistic about how ready it is than it actually is.
okay, so it's not really ready to flip over.
For any of these.
Yeah, I
So we're
spoke
back
to,
to the satellite.
yeah, I spoke to Research Channel, and Research Channel, they said, oh yeah, it's a very simple number of steps. Well, it turned out that they want us to find an Internet 2 connection in order to, now Internet 2 is Smith has.
Right, they have,
Okay.
yeah.
This is a very advanced form of the internet. This is different. I can't even get into it because I don't know enough about it, really.
Much
but
higher
it's-
capacity
It's,
download.
right. And so we do not have that. And so that's a pretty big stumbling block right there. The other thing, Classic Art Showcase, I spoke to their engineer and he said, well, Alliance for Community Media said they were supposed to be dealing with this, getting an hour up online. And so the story changes as you get closer to the target. And so I feel realistically now it's not something we can do. Okay, the streaming is not there. The technology is not there. It's not reliable enough. It's not tested enough. It's not consistent enough. The quality is not there. So that implementing that as a plan is probably not smart at this juncture for us. So.
Another thing is that if people at home are watching this meeting and want to contact you or
Please.
us and
Yeah.
say whatever they think about Al Jazeera or any of the other possible news
Yeah.
outlets, Channel 44.
Yep. NorthamptonTV@gmail.com. Okay.
I would love it if people responded to this by watching this, who would actually sat through this much.
Yeah.
And I would be delighted. I really do hope that feedback of any type would be really welcome. It indicates that you're paying attention and that you're as invested in this as you are in your community, and become members as well. Yes.
I do want to do this, which I
Yeah, okay.
didn't add to it.
Yes, let's do that. Okay.
So as we did last annual meeting, the staff and I talked, and we selected an NCTV producer of the year, someone who we feel really contributed to programming and time and to the NCTV mission, and that's Bonnie Burnham, who's here.
Thank God.
So we don't want Bonnie to leave, and we really feel lucky to have Bonnie as part of our member base. And Dan.
That's very nice.
So thanks for coming. So thanks and
I know that's what you wanted.
see you back. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Carl.
It's surprised that she gets to cover the city council meetings for the next year.
That's right.
That's her prize. That's right. You have to
They
sit
go
through
out
every
tonight,
council
they have to
meeting.
get up so early.
Any other questions? Any other points of conversation?
I mean, as far as Al Jazeera is concerned, after this discussion, is it that you'd like me to wait till see what the Comcast response is to see how this plays out? Is that how we're going to want to
Well,
move
do
forward
we
with this?
have to, somebody said suggest a lawyer.
Yeah, right.
Our attorney, right?
Yes,
That's the first.
so attorneys, we talk to attorneys. rather
Don't,
than us just.
don't we have to sort of deal with this?
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, well, if Comcast says it's a no-go, then it's gonna be interesting, then suddenly everything starts to change.
That's right.
You may be setting the precedent too.
Yes.
That's why that makes Comcast fight.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, well, that's exactly why I thought they were gonna respond positively.
And that's it. Get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Educate ourselves.
Well, we've already announced on air about Al Jazeera and the fish tank, I don't imagine.
Oh, well, he's talked about the fish tank with the Comcast guy right there, wasn't he?
And Al Jazeera.
With Steve.
And you talked about
Yeah,
both
you
of them,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, we had this whole conversation
Yeah,
with,
it was at the cab
Oh,
booth.
that's what inspired
I
it.
was watching him when you talked about the fish tank, because I was wondering.
Yeah.
And he didn't seem to.
No, you know what, we brought this up when we were doing ascertainment. Before we even signed the contract, we brought up, said, fine, okay, if that's the way you wanna play it, this is the way we'll play it back.
Might have been the bird's nest at that time.
Yeah.
Might have been
I
the
think it
first.
was, I think it was the bird's nest, if I remember correctly.
But the problem was is that ascertainment as a process was a public process, which Comcast benefited from enormously, because as we tried to negotiate it, their representative, Steve, sat here the whole time. We had no secrets from them, they had all the secrets from us. They didn't have to conduct their
And it was
process.
the same person who was at the cab booth.
That would be Steve.
Steve, yeah.
Steve's a fine person. He's from Point, so fine. Thank you for doing that, I forgot, but go ahead. Anything else? Anyone else have any other thoughts?
Well, is that why they brought up Al Jazeera, because he had come to the cab meeting?
Sure. I mean, I think it's good. It's a good, this is a question we need to know about.
Yeah.
So, you know, it wasn't helping us not have Comcast under certain things.
So obviously they have no problem with the fish tank.
I mean, you'd have to ask them. I don't know if they're happy
Maybe
about
tell
it.
us after we do our 6
Al-
months
Al-
of it.
Oh, that's
Like,
true.
Just the red
By the way,
herring.
that's
So they can get the fish.
Right, right.
And we certainly hope we'll get something better than the fish tank. We shouldn't be
Well, I don't know.
acting like
The
the
fish tank
fish
is
tank is the
very
end all
limited
and be all.
You know, we can
People can.
play with that concept.
We'll have 3 channels by then,
The
James,
end
so we
result
can
is so,
have a whole channel devoted to the fish tank, when it comes down to it. If
There's
it works.
the puppy
There's a lot
check.
of aquarium people out there who come out.
Right?
Take courses.
Catherine, for sure. Yeah.
If there's no other thoughts or business, then I entertain motion to adjourn.
I move that we.
Jane moves to adjourn, and Clodagh seconds it. All those in favor? Aye. Abstain? Opposed? Huh, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, thank you. That's his annual meeting, thank you.